on Ask a Vet today. We are talking to our special guest, Ben Shulman, the owner of Dog Ranch Resort. They have two locations, one here in Fairhope and one in Daphne. And today we're going to answer your questions about behavior, training, all your kind of things you want to know about pets and their behavior. So let's go ahead and get started. Our first question is, how can I get my Chihuahua to stop barking and going crazy every time he sees other dogs?
Gotcha, wonderful question. So typically what I tell people is make sure they have a leash and collar on. The reason why we use a leash and collar is because it's a lot easier to control our dog to get them to do obedience behaviors. First, I would start off by teaching them a strong sit. And when we teach them obedience commands, it gives them confidence in knowing a certain behavior. Once they have confidence in that behavior, we start to slowly introduce a distraction. When that distraction walks by, we really focus on telling our dog to sit. And we can use the leash and collar to pull up slightly and make sure that they stay in that position. Once they are confidently staying in that position, we increase the level of distractions and we slowly work our way up to dogs, people, dog parks, whatever that may be.
Oh, that's great. One question I get a lot from owners of new puppies is, when is a good time to start training? Like, is there a certain window when you shouldn't start too early, or when you get a puppy, when should they contact you guys?
So as far as training goes, day one. It's as simple as making sure that you're taking them outside to go to the right places to go potty. For me personally, as soon as your dog is up to date on their vaccines and they're cleared by their vet to go out in public and start training, that's when I would start seeking a professional. But from day one with my dogs, I typically start feeding one meal a day from my hand. So breakfast, we wake up, we practice following a treat in my hand just with a simple lure, and then we move them into a sit, move them into a down. So starting as soon as you get your dog is probably the best time. The later we get, what I tell people, it's always hard to untrain bad habits than going from the get-go and starting good habits right off the bat. So I would say as soon as possible.
That is definitely good to know. This one is kind of related to the question before, but a lot of people have wrote in and say, I have a dog that when he hears a doorbell or sees a delivery person, that really kind of sets them off. And so is that different than kind of what we discussed earlier, or do we kind of use the same method that you did discuss?
So there's this concept called the mailman effect. And what it is your dog is sitting at the window, and the first day you ever get your dog, they look out the window and someone comes and drops the mail in the mailbox, and then they leave. And when they saw that person, they're like, oh, there's a person there. And they get excited. Then the mailman comes the next day, and they get more excited. And they bark, they go roof. And then the mailman comes the next day, and the mailman's not even paying attention to your dog at all. And what eventually happens is your dog thinks it's their job to protect and scare away the mailman. Over time, that evolves into neighbors, that evolves to friends, families, dogs, birds, squirrels, whatever that may be. But basically your dog is learning unintentionally that every time I bark, that mailman goes away, and I'm doing my job and I feel very proud about that. So in order to fix that behavior, we always want to tether on our dogs. So for young dogs or dogs that I have trouble with, jumping on couch, jumping on guests, jumping on grandma and grandpa, stuff like that, I always let them drag a leash and collar around the house, because dogs are very much cause and effect. If I can't reprimand my dog in terms of getting them to do an obedience command or a preferred behavior, then yelling at them is not going to do any good. I have to make sure that I can step on the leash and tell them sit and get them to perform that behavior while that distraction's walking by. So what I would say is let your dog drag a leash and collar around the house when guests come over. The simplest thing you can do is step on the leash, and that way when the dog jumps up, the leash pulls them right back down to the ground, and wait until they're calm. When they're calm, finally reward them, and then let the dog pet the guest, or let the guest pet the dog, and so on and so forth.
I think that'll help out a lot of people. It's definitely very useful. One question we got from one of our clients, and I do get this a lot in exam rooms too, is they'll have a dog that no matter how often they take it outside, it still wants to come inside and pee or use the bathroom, and sometimes even on a specific rug or area. Do you have any advice as far as that goes?
Yeah, so that one's the older the dog is and they've got these bad potty training habits from previous owners or whatever their experience may be, it's harder to break a bad habit than it is to train a completely new habit. So the first thing I would say is freedom is earned, not given. What that means is I would never take my child to Disney World and say, okay kids, I'll see you in 2 weeks. It's all very much hold the hands, make sure we're following the rules of the house, so on and so forth. So for a dog that goes to the bathroom in my house, typically what I would do is I would confine them to my living room or my kitchen, somewhere smaller so that I can control the environment around them. Then what I would do is I would use a kennel. I would feed my dog their breakfast, lunch, and dinner in the kennel, make sure it's a positive thing for them, let them sleep in the kennel as well. And then first thing in the morning, we go outside, we take them to the same exact spot and let them go potty. We say go potty and they do number 1 and 2. Once they go 1 and 2, I can bring them back in and they get to play in the house. Now, if I take them outside and they don't go number 2, and I'm worried about them going around and using the bathroom in the house, what I would do is I would bring them right back in their kennel. I bring them right back into their kennel and I give it about 20 to 30 minutes depending on the dog's age and size. And then we repeat the process. We open the kennel, we walk right back to the same spot, we tell them go potty, and then when they go potty, they get to come in and their reward for coming in the house is hanging out and being with the family. I also don't treat my dogs when they go to the bathroom outside. I tell people I don't get a treat every time I go to the bathroom, neither should your dog, especially with an expected behavior. What a lot of dogs do is why they're so intelligent is they'll run outside, they'll predict the treat is coming, they'll go pee real quick, they'll take the treat, and then they'll run back inside and they'll go, oh, I didn't get to empty my bladder because I was so excited about the treat, and they go right on your nice carpet. So bottom line, we want to control in a confined space and make sure that once we build up that good habit of taking them to the same spot, if they don't potty, they don't get to play with us, and you'll start to see results rather quickly. Dogs pick up on that stuff super fast.
And then we have one last question, because I don't want to use up too much of your time, but we had several people write in and ask, as soon as they walk in the door, as soon as a guest or someone comes in the house, the dog wants to run and jump up on them. Mm-hmm. And what's your advice as far as to help with that?
So basically we control who comes in and out of our house, right? We can just turn a lock or unturn the lock. What that means is we go back to the leash and collar. So knock, 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 someone knocks on your door. Your dog goes crazy. I have a leash and collar sitting by my door. I put it on my dog and I put the leash on the ground and I step on the leash. When I step on the leash, I unlock the door and I say, come on in. And the guest comes on in and my dog's going crazy, wagging their tail, barking, doing all of this stuff. What I've found more often than not, if you do that maybe a couple times and they realize that they don't get to act that way anymore because they can't jump or touch or bark at the person, it stops really quickly because they're so thrown off of what their usual rhythm is. And then once the dog is calm, you can reward them by petting them and let them sniff and all of that jazz. Same thing for a dog that is really fearful. If you have a dog that runs away when guests come over, we want to teach them that it's not the end of the world when a new person enters the home. You can stand by my side and be okay, and they're not going to pet you, but you need to at least experience the fact that someone is coming to the house. And when they come in, they at least get repetitions and practice being around a new person that might make them feel more uncomfortable. So it works for our excitable dogs and it works for our fearful dogs. So both ends of the spectrum.
Oh, that's great.
Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. I don't want to use up too much of your time. I know you're busy. You got lots of dogs to train and take care of. Behavior questions and training is something I get every single day in the clinic, and so I want to encourage everybody, if you have questions, if you need help with your dog, if you want doggy daycare, boarding, all of those things, please look up Dog Ranch Resort. They're absolutely the best, and I would highly recommend them to anybody.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming today and answering these questions.